Hello, Gluttoniers. Welcome to another episode of High Gluttony. I'm your host, Gretchen, and today we are discussing duck confit, something that I realized today I've been making more of my life than not making. So that's the scary thing to think about. And while I discuss duck confit slash duck rillette, I'm going to have a little bit of jellyfish pre-rolls from Glasshouse Farms. This is a CBD heavy blend with 11% CBD and then 3% THC. And alongside that, because I am going to a party later, I am having a coffee with a little bit of Frangelico in it, just so that I will have the will to go to said party later and not be too tired. So, cheers. I'm going to light up my joint here, and then we'll talk about duck confit. Jellyfish. Ooh. Duck confit. What is it? It's like any other preserved meat application where you use the fat to help preserve it and help cook it. Essentially, it comes down to being a duck braised in its own fat. You traditionally would keep that under its fat, which will help preserve the duck. Most recipes recommend curing the duck legs for about 24 hours prior to doing the confit. I already did mine yesterday, and I did not cure them for 24 hours in advance. So we'll see how they taste, but I think they'll be fine. I added a little bit of extra seasoning to the fat in order to hopefully make up for that lack of curing time. And I'll just be shredding that up, mixing in a little bit of fat. I think I'm going to take the duck skin and make some duck skin cracklings to go on top. Hopefully it'll be delicious and everybody at the party tonight will enjoy it. I was invited to this party and talked to my friend and was like, oh, there are 3 different things I might want to do. Either a dessert board, cheese board, or a meat board. And she said, why don't you do the meat board? Because I think cheese board is a little too easy. And so is like a cookie board or dessert board that other people are going to be able to do that, but probably won't have a lot of meat boards coming up. So I am slightly concerned. There's somebody bringing what they're calling an Italian board, and I think there might be some overlap because I am definitely using a fair amount of Italian cold cuts for mine. But I thought, oh, is there a meat thing I can make myself and add on to this board? That would be good. And I thought, duck confit, which is one of my favorite. And then I'm going to make duck rillette with that. So it's pretty much duck rillette comes down to the shredding and then seasoning and just making it ready to be spread on a cracker. I might chop them a little bit too, just to make the pieces a little bit more cracker friendly. Confit is really just a preservation of anything because you can have, I believe I was watching the most recent season of British Bake Off and somebody was talking about a strawberry confit, which is strawberries preserved in sugar syrup. I've done, one of the places I used to work, we did an apple confit, and that was like very, very thinly sliced apples, sliced up, and I think we'd put a little caramel in the bottom of that, and then cook it in the oven overnight at a really low temperature, and just let the water evaporate, and then that would be like, it would last quite a long time. It was really cool because you just take a slice out of it and the pectin from the apples help that set. Confit is really just preserving something. Now, duck confit requires cooking the duck in its fat. You can use just the fat from the legs themselves. I had a little extra fat from my duck from Thanksgiving, so I figured I'd use that. Also because it had a little bit of flavor to it, I took my duck from Thanksgiving and had seasoned it up and let it sit, and so it was cured pretty well. And then once I'd finished cooking the duck confit last night, I just turned the oven off and let it sit. It's just had plenty of time to sit, reabsorb any fat that it wants to suck back into the duck leg and get nice and tender. I have not tasted it yet, so I will be tasting that now. as I go to shred it, just to see what the actual flavor is like, and then adjusting my seasoning as I go while I'm making my duck rillette spread. So I guess I'll head over to the kitchen because that's where my beverage is, and I feel like I've talked about duck confit long enough. I may disagree with that later, but I can always add in some shit later when I am editing and decide it needs something else. So let's head into the kitchen to make some duck rillette. I'm gonna put on some gloves. Got a pan over here. I'm gonna get my little saucepan out so I can work on my duck crackling. I'm gonna set this pan over low heat just to slowly render out any additional fat that might be in the skin. Not a lot of it left in there, let me tell you. Hopefully I can have some cracklets for the top here, just to be a little bit extra on that duck confit. Peeling the skin off is a bit more of a delicate operation than I was expecting. I've got 4 duck legs. Most of the recipes I saw called for 8, but there are 14 people coming to this party, and everybody's bringing some sort of board. And so I figure less is, well, I would say less is more, but that's not necessarily right. It's okay to have less for this party. I mean, it smells pretty good. Can't really go wrong with duck confit, I think. I mean, anything that's cooked in its own fat is all right by my count. It just has a really nice ducky smell to it. Pretty excited about this. It's been a minute since I've actually done duck confit, though I do usually slow cook my duck. All right, so I'm gonna taste this. Okay. Pretty good. Could use a little bit of additional flavoring. I'm gonna think about what I think should go in there. This is shredding up pretty nice. It's tender. Don't think I'm gonna even need to cut it up at all, but maybe I'll just chop it up lightly. But so far, really nice, really tender. I think I can go with some accent flavors, might be a good way to describe what I might need here. A little extra something. Ooh, onion confit. That also is very good. I love an onion confit. Onion cooked in fat. But confit doesn't have to be cooked in fat. It's just any preserve. I guess I should have looked up what confit means before starting this. But if I remember correctly, it's just preserved, Confiture. Well, that's kind of candied, I think. I need to practice my French. Greasy hands. I didn't think about how greasy my hands are gonna be. So I'm picking up my drink with my wrists. Okay. I think I picked the perfect size container for my duck rillette. Could have also looked up rillette when I was in the middle of this, shouldn't I? Really nice. Just shredding super easily off the bone. I got some nice clean bones here. Duck leg number 2. I'm so pleased with how this turned out. Absolutely perfect. I think the last time I attempted to make duck confit, I fucked it up a little bit. So I'm glad I'm redeeming myself and not making a hot mess for my meat board later. I am gonna make little skewers with little meat rosettes on them, and I made some broiled, because my preference would be to do grilled, but it's been raining here for the last few days, so grilled hasn't been really super feasible. I made some broiled eggplant, and I'm gonna make some little various skewers with a bunch of different cured meats, some store-bought roasted peppers. I do think I have some little red peppers here, some raw ones, so I might cut some of those up too, just to have a little bit of variety. My skin is starting to go. Yeah, this is just perfectly done. Okay, 4 duck legs, but it makes kind of a lot. My bowl might be too small. I gotta get a bigger container. Number 3 is done. Last leg. A little more skin on this one. missed. Once I maybe chop this a little bit, add a little bit of extra fat into it, might fit okay into this little bowl. So I have a plate with a bunch of fat on it, scraping it into my pan of fat that I'm going to heat up in a minute here. I'll use my plate for my bones. I might just toss those in with a little bit of water and cook those up. Now, let's think about what we want seasoning-wise in here. I'm just gonna do a light chop on this, just to get them all sort of in a almost spreadable size. Spreadable, but not too spreadable. Just I'm gonna leave it there. I'll see what I feel like needs to be added here. So we'll do some salt and pepper, of course. Smidge of onion powder in. A little celery salt might not go off. Umami seasoning here. And some smoked salt. Not very smoky anymore. So maybe we'll skip over that. Can't seem to see my onion powder. Well, you know what? Instead of onion powder, we'll put a little asafoetida in here. That will be a really interesting garlicky, fennelly, oniony kind of aromatic. Oh, and I do have some parsley here, which I might chop up and add in. No, that's really good. Chop up some of this parsley and mix it right in. That looks good. My skin that's rendering out, I'm going to take a little bit of this fat and just sort of drizzle it on to mix in. Yes, ma'am. That is tasty. And it is kind of pasty. Yeah, that will work nicely. Torn about if I should add more salt. A smidge. And maybe just a hit of hot sauce. Cannot go wrong with a little hit of hot sauce. I'm sorely tempted to put in some like chopped up capers or something, but I probably will just put those on the side. So there we go. All in, making this took 8 hours. Most of that is inactive time though, for you. And you need to give yourself a day, probably. I think it was good to let it sit in the fat overnight and chill. I will have to report back later, see what the feedback is from the party, and if my cracklins are actually a success. But otherwise, we'll see you all in the future. All right, Gluttoniers, so a little follow-up on the duck rillette, duck confit episode. My meat platter was claimed to be by several people at the party the best thing there, and I'm only bragging a little bit. Personal victory, yes. I am very proud of the rillets. They were very, very good. A little sad I forgot to take my pickled fruit to go with them. They were really good with all the other accompaniments, and I'm pretty sure that my friend Katie also had some jam or something that I had given her at one point that she busted out, so that was kind of a nice addition. Duck rillets are really good. I wish I was living a more decadent lifestyle these days, but really hard to want to shell out the cash for duck on a regular basis. So, especially when I don't really need to make my own duck rillettes. They are one of those gluttony things. I will put out my rough recipe, and sorry that it's always a bit of a rough recipe, but taste everything you cook, because that's the only way to get to success. Anyway, off we go.